Truth time. When's the last time you raised your hands for a swift kick in the pants? Well, I'm the no-nonsense type friend who's going to tell you when you have food in your teeth. So, let's get right to it. This is your infusion of sacred and secular, calling you higher into who God created you to be, how intimately faith applies to every part of your life, and how you can live that faith walk every single day in the marketplace. I've felt the tension of separation of church and state. I've been one of a few women at a table of men for decades, and I've stood my ground. Are you ready to do the same? These tools, resources, and interviews are meant to do just that. I'm Jan Touchberry, and it's time to share her faith at work. So, let's address the kick in the pants. I've been called abrasive and intimidating on occasion, not surprising to some, but as you get to know me, you're going to realize that I really am just passionate about purpose and seeing women exist in the fullness of who they were created to be. It's really exactly, in fact, why I'm here with you today on this podcast, and I'm so excited that we get to spend a few minutes together. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. Over the last few years, I've found a real passion in both my role in the church and in ministry that I do every single day in my life and in my business, helping to encourage and inspire other women to live into who God created them to be and to shine brightly with the love of Jesus to everyone that He chooses to bring across their path. I don't know about you, but I don't believe that there are any accidents. Everything is on purpose in the kingdom of God. So, let me tell you a little bit about my business journey. Like so many, it started with a catalyst, taking a product because there was something that I was not happy about in my own life. I started seeing some results. People started asking me about it. And I thought, if they're asking me, why not make some money? And God ended up using that to help me start what I call my accidental business. I had no intention of getting into the network marketing space. And yet, as God so faithfully does, He sees the big picture, thankfully, and knew what was coming, knew that we were getting ready to go into a very difficult financial time as a family. And God used that accidental business to get us through some very lean times financially, as my husband found himself out of work for over 6 months. God provided, as He always does. He is faithful to do that. And those very small beginnings activated a love for all things business that honestly I never knew I had. My business has morphed over the last decade, beginning in network marketing, and has branched off into a full-fledged branding and website design agency, which I am so pleased with. I feel more fulfilled than I have in some ways in my entire life. I never went to college. Instead, I fell in love with a boy, got married, and started having babies. But I have always been someone that loves learning, and given enough time, I can learn just about anything. I'm a bit of a self-taught person, you might say. My zones of genius that really stem from decades of development, both inside and outside the church, have been the pillars of what God has used to support clients in areas of communication, personal branding, design work, social media, techie things. I always say that I have a love-hate relationship with technology. I mostly love it, but when it doesn't work, everyone hates it, right? And now I love helping other women discover how God's created them and how to use their giftings to support their families and create wealth that can be used to expand God's work here on earth. As you're listening to me, you can clearly hear my passion for faith rooted in Jesus. And now that you know a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey, let's take a look back at the foundation. Have you ever heard the old adage that preachers' kids either end up as atheists or working for the church? Well, that certainly rings true for this girl. I am the daughter of a preacher, and I quite literally grew up in the church. If the doors were open, we were there. Growing up in the church, as you can imagine, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly, which I guess is why so many preachers' kids end up falling away from faith. In some ways, I was the same. I saw the really ugly. And as a young adult, I decided I wanted no part of it. You know, I think all of us at some point in our life have to go through the struggle of our faith becoming our own instead of something that we just grew up with that belongs to our parents. And that struggle is hard. And it was hard for me. Thankfully, it didn't last very long. And in the most grace filled way that only God can, He drew me back to not only Himself, but He showed me that the church really is just a group of people that are ordinary, sinful human beings who are trying to do the best that they can with what they have. And there's going to be mistakes made. No one's perfect except Jesus. And these people inside the church have been chosen to do a very tough job. And so, this revelation and really healing that took place during that time in my life began a decades long passion for the local church. And now I've worked in vocational ministry for over 30 years. I have worn more hats than I can count. It's actually kind of a joke on my church staff that the only job I haven't had is senior pastor, which, by the way, I would never want. That's a really hard job. And so I've always been a bit of a tech nerd and what most would consider an early adopter of techie things. If there is a new phone, I have it. And when the internet became a thing, I wanted to explore every part of it. Back in the day when Facebook was only for college students, I got on a waiting list for people older than college students to get involved in Facebook. And so I just remember everything about the internet and about connecting with people online and not having to be in the same space was fascinating to me. And I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to figure out how I could use this not only in life for connecting with people, but in business and in ministry. I remember very specifically, I think probably 14 years or more ago, that I was sitting in my office at church with a friend of mine who happened to be a person in the IT space. And I was asking him if he thought that the online space could be used for ministry. At that point, it really wasn't. It was just a way for people to connect. And so I began an online ministry at our church when no one really was doing it. Very few people were doing it. And so I've been doing online ministry inside the walls of the church for over 14 years. I really believe that it is the epitome of an endless mission field. And for many, there's the safety of a screen there. So you can, while there's Instagram filters, yes, and we joke that there's, the Instagram side of life that people see. I believe that the safety of a screen can actually help people become more vulnerable and more real. And if you let the online space be what it can be and open your eyes to what it can be, you don't have to be in vocational ministry to use that space or any other space for that matter to show others what being a follower of Jesus really looks like. During that same period of time, vocational ministry was getting harder for me. Women in the church can be such a controversial topic depending on what church you belong to, what denomination you belong to, who you talk to, what circle you run in. And being one of the only women around a table full of men can leave you feeling unimportant, unvalued, and unheard. Not just inside the church and not just women, but I know there are women who have to deal with this in business as well. I was talking to a group of elders who were really trying to listen to a group of women in leadership, and I likened it to the story of the elephants in India when they're being trained as very young, small elephants that are mostly manageable. They are chained one foot so that they can only go so far. And as they grow, they get used to being chained. And so they don't ever stray from that space that they're confined to. And I feel like in some ways that's how I was. I had been tethered and chained for so long, been told that I could only go so far, that I just didn't try anymore. It was really a gut-wrenching time of my life. I honestly doubted my calling, my strengths, and a lot of my God-given purpose. To say that I was discouraged in ministry is probably an understatement. And then I had this epiphany that discourage really means you're not full of courage. I was afraid. Fast forward to 2020. We all know what happened when the world shut down in March of 2020, at least in the US. For some parts of the world, it happened way before that. But some people outside the church walls may not understand is that inside the church, those of us who had struggled for so long championing the value of online ministry became very important pieces to the puzzle literally overnight when every area of ministry in the church became online ministry. So suddenly, the girl who felt unimportant, unvalued, and unheard was one who was being asked about her ideas and her thoughts, and her words became weighty. It was almost like I had a rebirth of sorts. I felt the Lord was urging me to lean in and step up. I had this amazing realization that I was created on purpose for a purpose, exactly like I am, a strong, driven Enneagram 8 woman who has value both inside and outside the church walls. You've already heard my business journey, which is where we started this podcast. Utilizing everything that God has made me to be has allowed me to really come alive in the business world over the last decade and in every aspect of my life, not just business. Reality is, I'm no longer afraid to speak out in the church anymore either. I flat out told my boss one day that this is who God created me to be, and I don't feel like I have to apologize for it anymore. And with that, there is such a freedom because now I find myself in a position that I'm being asked and encouraged to do this more. It's a little bit bizarre and unexpected. God surely does have a sense of humor. If I am not living out who God created me to be in every way, in some ways, I wonder if I'm sinning. For sure, I know that I'm not honoring the Lord, not believing who He says I am. I'm not running the race that He has created for me. And that is all kinds of wrong. So, what about this podcast? Well, it's been years, some might say a lifetime in the making. My faith at work in me, and I cannot wait to continue to walk in the adventure that God has planned, sharing what I'm learning, introducing you to some really amazing women along the way. I had the privilege over the last 12 months of being part of an elite mastermind full of women that I never thought that I would be in the room with. 6, 7, and 8-figure business women who can struggle with blending the sacred and secular. They don't know how to do it. They're afraid. There are so many repercussions that could happen doing that in their own business. And that really spurred a desire to help them understand that their faith is such an important part of their business. And without it, really, is it all that it could be, all that God designed it to be? So as we journey through this together, you can expect to hear the lessons I'm learning, and I'll share some stories of amazing faith-filled women as well. We're going to talk about authenticity, self-worth, self-confidence, personal growth, excuses, and limiting beliefs. We'll dive into leadership, what it is to be unafraid, full of courage, and so much more. So buckle up, sister. We're going to blur the lines between the sacred and the secular. We're going to redefine vocational ministry, and we're going to realize that every vocation, no matter what it is, should be ministry when you're a follower of Jesus. So let's put our faith to work, glorifying God and pointing others to Him. See you next time.